Welcome to OG and Jesus, the podcast, where the oil field and blue collar meets faith, real life, and real conversations. Hosted by Casey Red Morris and Pastor Marcus Rosa. It's steel-toe boots, hard hats, long hours, real work, and real faith. Whether you are driving to work, sitting in traffic, or just needing real talk, this podcast is for you.
Think anybody listened to the last?
I'm hoping that.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, so if you missed last episode, you have to check it out. Casey was this tug of war struggle battle that you may be facing. But one of the battles today is kind of going along with what you mentioned last time. Let's talk about what's that old song? It's all about the money, you know.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
so finances, things that are going on. I guess that's a struggle for blue collar folks, you know, trying to figure out. Tell me, tell me about your money issues, brother.
Being a provider. My dad raised me and my brother as the man is the provider for the house.
Okay.
There you have working women, your moms and your spouses work also, but the man provides. The man was the one that he brought home the money. He made sure everybody was fed. He made sure everybody was clothed. There was a roof over everybody's head, and that was the man's responsibility. I think there's a lot of us that's exactly how we believe, and we get wrapped up in focused on strictly making money, where we don't spend quality time with our spouses, our kids, and everything. And before you know it, your kids are grown, they're gone, and it's just you and your wife, and you're still trying to work every time and all the time. I don't take off. I don't call in, which I have a job. When you work 14 days, you should be able to schedule what you need to do on your 14 days off. That's how I've always looked at it. And there's a lot of us that do look at it that way. But there's also opportunities to work over. And I heard a guy one time tell me, he said, man, I worked 360 days of this year. He said, I was only off 5 days. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, and he was naming off, I got this side by side, and I got this, and I got that. And I'm like, okay, well, if you only were home 5 days, who's using it? And he's like, oh, well, my wife and kids get to use it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. But you don't get to spend no time with them to use it. So you're just enwrapped in that, making the money. And money's a bad thing. It's a good thing, but it's a bad thing. Because once you get a taste of money, that's what you want.
Now, some folks already listening. They're like, man, first of all, you don't know what it's like. I can't be the sole provider. Our family, you know, my wife's got to work, and then when I get home, man, I'm just wanting to, you know, I just want to rest. And I ain't coming home to deal with all these kids and wife and all those kind of things. Now we're going to answer some of that. My name's Pastor Marcus. Good to see you guys. Introduce yourself, my friend.
I'm Red.
This here is Red. This here is the OG and Jesus podcast. You can see it up there. We are excited for you to join us today. But like we said, so money, right? And so the reality is, some of you guys are kind of in that struggle of I need to work more, I need to make more money, but then you have no idea where that money is going because you never enjoy any part of it. So we're gonna, I guess, talk about priorities, talk about, you know, some things that our folks. If you first of all. If you've been watching for a little while, you've realized that Jesus has made a difference in your life,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so where did you used to be when it comes to money? What are you learning about, you know, handling and providing now? Because he's old school. I mean, it's OG. So, you know, have you noticed some differences? Let's just talk about work first of all. You know, the Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 3:10, if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat, right? And so
Right.
there's a responsibility wise, but then also I think you can, if you're not careful, that love of money, not money being the root of all evil, but the love of money, just like always wanting more. Tell folks out there just so they can get an idea that, you know, you ain't just talking out of the wind and stuff. But you've gone through some of those struggles of making really good money, of being out there, of, you know, handling stuff. So just give folks an idea of where you've been and so they can kind of relate to what you're talking about.
As as a provider, uh, my wife she's the same way. She's one of these people that she doesn't call in sick to work. Even when she's sick, she still goes to work. She don't take off. I don't take off. We try to plan things around my days off and everything. But I can remember years ago when I was worked on an ambulance. Um, there was a lot of times that I went to work and my wife goes to work. She works Monday through Fridays, but she would go to work as a nurse. And there's a lot of times that we might have $2 in our pocket because we had kids at home that we had to give to make sure that they had lunch money, make sure they had clothes, make sure they had food at home and stuff like that. And you sacrifice, you may be making decent money, but you sacrifice everything to make sure that they have. And that's what makes you that provider, that guy that's going to make sure they have everything. And then a lot of times I see younger guys, especially in our career field, they're not used to making the kind of money that they make, and automatically they go out and they buy the big trucks, they buy the boats, the motorcycles, everything like that. And then there's a downturn in life or a downturn in the oil field, and now they don't have a job. They're laid off or something like that. So now they're struggling because they still have all these bills to pay for, and they don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we we lust after the toys and the being like Joe Blow, Hey, he's got a big truck. I gotta have a big truck. Hey, he's got a motorcycle. I gotta have a motorcycle. Hey, he's got, we do that a lot, and you have to get away from it because if not, man, I still struggle with spending. I mean, I'm a kind of person that if I want it, I think I should have it, and I'll try to figure out a way to buy it.
Yeah.
I might not have the money, but I'm still going to try to figure out a way to buy it.
Well, he does have a big truck, and he does have a motorcycle, but you've also had times when all of that was stripped away from you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean,
so
there's times that I drove an old truck or an old car or just to get by and get where I needed to go. Hey, I've walked to work before. I rode a bicycle to work before. I've done things that prime example, when I got arrested and my truck was taken from me, I had to bum rides off everybody or walk to where I wanted to get to. And it's a different aspect of life when you don't have, and you did have, but now you don't have, and you have to figure out different ways to do what you need to do. And I wouldn't want to be that person that ever had to do that for my kids. Um, I now have grandkids, and everybody says, "Why is having grandkids a lot different than your own kids?" And even our kids are like, "Well, you didn't treat us like that, or you didn't do this for us." It's different because when you're a parent and you have kids at home, that's what you're thinking about. You're making sure they're fed. You're making sure that they eat. You're making sure that they have clothes on their back, that they're going to school, that they have a roof to live under, that their clothes are washed. That you got everything is consumed into making sure that they survive. When they are grown and gone, you see them doing things in their life and providing for their kids, and you have grandkids come over. Well, now you can enjoy just being with the grandkids, and spending time with the grandkids and doing things.
He's got a bunch of them now.
Yeah.
He got a brand new little one that just came along and stuff. So
Yep.
he's got a slew of grandkids that are just around him and all. What would you say to that person who maybe they just entered into the workforce, and you're looking back at it as an OG status and stuff? If you would have known this as a 20-something-year-old, somebody who just entered into blue collar life, into the oil field or whatever area, things that you've learned over time, what would you tell a young person who's watching, or to say, hey, look, man, these are some things you really need to think about before you start making these mistakes?
You have to plan for that rainy day. I never did, and there was times that my bank account was in the negative, and I didn't know how I was going to make it to the next next paycheck, and you live paycheck to paycheck. And when you do that, man, don't follow my lead, because I did it, and it's yeah, it's not good. You never have what you need because you spend it on something you didn't need, and it's just like the habits that we form, whether it be drugs, alcohol, porn, gambling. You get to that point to where everything goes to that, and it doesn't go to where it needs to go. And you got to stay on that line of, if you're going to be that provider, you got to provide, but you also got to make sure that you have something to provide when it's not there. The oil and gas industry, it's a up and down game. You can almost count on about every 5 years we're going to have a downturn, and most companies have to lay folks off. And it's not because you do bad work or you're not good at your job. You get laid off because they have to make cuts, and operators aren't wanting to contract rigs or not wanting to drill, and it's not worth their money to drill and stuff like that. So you have to save for that rainy day. And I see a lot of guys. Had a guy one time tell me, he said, "Man, we just started a downturn." He said, "I just bought this brand new truck. Do you think they'll take it back?" Oh, yeah, they'll take it back. It's going to be at a loss, and you're still going to owe for what you didn't pay. What they didn't pay for it. So you're still struggling. And I think it makes a lot of guys turn to drastic ways. And you have to you still got to be the provider. You have to, but I think concentrating on just providing and not spending that quality time with your wife or your kids and everything, like I said, once it's gone, you lost it. um, and it's hard. You can't get it back.
Now, all right. So I didn't ask Red's permission to kind of talk about this, um, but you had mentioned, all right. So you mentioned in past episodes and all, that you are on your third wife, right? Um, if you look back at some of the things that you've gone through, um, what do you think any of the stuff that you're talking about on today's episode contributed to some of your, some past relationships falling apart? I mean, your focus, perspective, or I'm sure there were other issues as well. But but a lot of times they say in marriages, if there are two things that kind of mess things up, is sex and money is what they'll say. And so sometimes if those aren't in order, then that kind of messes up, and it affects the rest of your life. And so so how has um, that misplaced priorities in your life in the past kind of messed some things up in the way that you walk through life?
Money was a struggle. It's always been a struggle, and it was definitely in my first two marriages. It was a struggle. Not so much in my marriage now, because I guess we're older and wiser, and there's there's actually, I think it's my first marriage, I think, was more of a convenience thing. It was we liked being around each other. But we grew apart quick. And then in my second marriage, yeah, it was more of a, you do your thing, I do my thing kind of thing, and you didn't care about what the other one was doing. And I drew apart. I grew apart from both of them because I still wanted more, and the main thing I wanted more of was money, and it didn't matter. You know, I was still trying to provide, but yeah,
Now with you and Teresa, y'all seem to like each other.
yeah.
Yeah, they kind of chill and hang out, and kind of
It ain't always
enjoy.
been that way. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our times, where we fought and argued, and you think about it, and you go back and think about it. Most of our arguing and fighting was about money, and it was my fault, because like I said, I can't save money. I want to spend money, I can't take it with me when I'm gone. That's what I always say, you know. And she's the type of person that she's organized. She wants everything a certain way. It has to be written down. It has to be, you know, your bills have to be paid. You have to mark them when you pay them and stuff like that. And do I mark it all the time? Hell no.
Yeah, he's
And
not. Yeah. So
and she gets upset and you know we'll have an argument and everything. But then yeah, it's different. It's a true love.
yeah,
It's a we communicate. We do. We've always communicated. That's one thing I didn't have in my other relationships is we didn't communicate. And I stand by her decisions and she stands by my decisions and we stand by our decisions together.
that's good stuff. Well, and probably what you realize though is, obviously, if you're watching this, blue collar folks, you're making a living, but I think what you're trying to make sure is that while you're making a living, you're providing that you don't miss out on the things that actually matter the most.
Right. Right.
You know.
What's the old song? I relate a lot of things to songs.
Yeah. Hey, and he did this last time too. Y'all just leave a comment. So whenever Casey, when Red comes up with a song, he quotes it, but it's like it's not the right one. Y'all just put it in the comments below. It's like this is the song you just think about. Cats in the Cradle.
Cats in the Cradle.
There you go. I knew what he was thinking.
That's what I was thinking about. If you truly listen to that song, that's what he talks about.
Yeah.
He talks about, his dad was never home, never spent time with him and everything, and then he turned out to be the exact same way. And then when his dad was wanting him to spend the time with him when he was older, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think we do that a lot. My son and my daughters, they work. My son works all the time. He's one of them guys that he's going to work, and he thinks that and you'll see it a lot it's a lot in the blue collar world is if my guys are going to be there working, I got to be there with them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to let people do their thing. You have to step back and say, "Hey, I taught you how to do it. Now you do it." I see a lot of rig managers, man. Their first couple of days at work, they don't sleep for 48 hours or 72 sometimes because they're out there working with these guys, and you got to have that trust, and you got to say, look, I've taught them how to do it. Let them do it.
Well, give us an OG perspective because there's some guys out there who I'm trying to say this real delicately. They don't really see it as their responsibility as a man. We'll just man talk real quick. Like, they don't really have a concern about, hey, I've made these kids. I'm not really worried about providing for them. I've got a spouse at home. I'm going to do my thing, and she can struggle and hustle on her own. What would you say to those guys that don't understand this responsibility as a man to take care of your family? I'll read you a verse real quick in 1 Timothy chapter 5. It says, "Look, if you don't provide, you're worse than an unbeliever." So, specifically for Christian men, like, that's a huge responsibility. It's a God-given responsibility. So what would you say to somebody who's like, man, I don't really care about trying to provide. That's not a big deal for me. And before you do it, I didn't want to pull something out of his pocket that he's like, man, I'm about to cuss these folks. I'm still working on cussing and stuff. But I think it's important. So so just as a dad, as an OG talking to a young person, what would you say to them? Like, hey, you got to think about this.
You got to provide for them. You got to give them, especially when they're young. Now, once they turn 18 years old, I'm a firm believer in that you either go to college or you get a job or you become a productive part of society. I'm not a bank. I'm not going to keep funding you for the rest of your life. And if it breaks that relationship, guess what? I'm still your dad. I still love you. I'll always love you. But if you don't want to be in my life because I'm not just handing out money to you, then we need to go our separate ways. But yeah, if you make a child, you knew what you were doing when you did it. You knew what the outcome was going to be. You got to provide. They didn't ask to be brought into this world. You got to provide for them. You got to show them that hey, this is how you do things. I know a lot of guys that do think that yeah, I got her pregnant, but we're not together. I shouldn't have to pay for them kids. I don't do anything. Yeah, you should pay for them kids. You should help them. You got to.
Yeah. Now, has over the years of you providing for your family, for your kids and stuff, has it ever meant that you've gone without? Has it ever meant that you've had to struggle on your own because you did what you had to do?
Yeah, me and Teresa, back to what I was saying earlier, when I worked on an ambulance, I worked 48-hour shifts and 72-hour shifts. And I've gone on a 72-hour shift. I've left that Friday morning, had to be there at 7 o'clock, and I didn't get off to 7 o'clock Monday. And I went to work with $5 in my pocket. How you going to eat off $5 in 3 days? Well, you make it work somehow or another. You make it work, and sometimes you just go without. You don't eat. You might not eat that day, but in your heart and in your mind that those kids ate and they had what they needed, and that was the big. That's a big struggle. Was I've got to do without to make sure that they do, and you you go without. You have to go without, and it's hard to go without, but you got to do it.
Oh yeah. So get off the video game, stop smoking weed all the time, and make sure take whatever it takes. Man up, and sometimes you got to do that. You've got to take the responsibility. And I think sometimes because guys, especially in this different generational ideas, because they don't understand the responsibility, that's why they feel like they're just kind of floundering and just they don't have any purpose. Um, and if you can't find a purpose in your life built on manhood and responsibility, you'll find some dumb ways to spend your time.
I think in society nowadays we not me, not you, but
Yeah,
I think that people look at it like it's wrong to be a man. It's wrong to have manly feelings and manly thoughts and to do. I think society is trying to take that away from people, and I think a lot of our younger guys grow up to where, man, we had a guy come on one of the rigs and he didn't know what a screwdriver was. Come on now, if you never even worked on a car,
yeah,
you know what a screwdriver is. If you never worked on anything, you got to know what it's. We don't teach. And I think if you go back to the Bible, it talks about being a man and how to be a man, how to be a dad and a father. It teaches you how to do that, but we don't do that in society no more. We don't encourage little boys to go out and play cops and robbers or army soldiers or anything like that. We have guys wanting to use women's bathrooms or people identifying as a cat or something like that. Man, I don't understand it. My
yeah.
grandfather would be rolling over in his grave because he was a farmer. He was overalls, tractors, farming, you know, fishing. That's the kind of person he was. My dad was the same way. My dad was in the military, but he was a manly man. He's the kind of guy that he loves sports. He loves to show you how to fish and different things like. We've got to teach our little boys how to be men. You got to teach them. I think you got to teach them to be a provider.
Yeah.
They have to. They have to provide because, and I understand equal rights and I understand a woman wanting to work and everything. And hey, my wife will never retire. You'd have to make her retire. She
Yeah.
wants to retire. She always talks about it, but then she goes back to work. And a lot of times those reasons are, can you afford to retire? Guys ask me all the time, when are you going to retire? And I tell them, I say, I'm going to retire. My funeral will be at 2 o'clock, so I'll retire at 11:30. Clean up, get my casket, and I'll be buried.
Yeah, he's gonna hop in his own casket. He'll be like,
Yeah.
"All right, I'm done." And so hold on, give me about 5 minutes. Let me get comfortable in here. Yeah, my father-in-law, he tried his casket out. He made sure he had like a Tempur-Pedic pillow and mattress and all. He just want to make sure like he's comfortable. I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna matter at that time. But and look, I'm bougie on a budget. I'm probably like the least blue collar guy that you'll know. I'm just here hosting with Red and stuff. But the reality is, I think in the end, a man takes responsibility. Whatever way that means, you've got to man up. And so for those young folks out there, um, God has given you the responsibility. We placed Adam and Eve in the garden. He gave them with a responsibility. So, there's a weight to carry as a man to walk in that steps. So, so that's for those young folks. Hey, if you don't work, you don't eat. So don't expect, nobody's entitled to give you anything in life.
I tell my kids all the time. I used to tell them when they were little, the world owes you nothing. Nobody out there owes you a dime. You get what you want. What you want out of life is what you get. You got to be willing to put in the work, put in the time, and do what you got to do. And we'll talk about it in a later episode. Of I do want to talk about marriage and having a spouse at home that's strong and strong willed and knows how to handle things. My wife is a very strong person. She's very strong willed. She and
She don't play.
No, she doesn't play. She's probably the. I don't know if you ever watched the.
Be careful now. She's gonna watch this later on. Be careful. All right, I'm
Have
trying
you-
to save them now.
Have you ever watched Sons of Anarchy on TV? It was about a motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there was a lady on there, Gemma, which played Peg in Married with Children, but then she goes to the Sons of Anarchy and she's Gemma, the mama of Jack. My wife, she's Gemma.
Okay.
She is Gemma.
I tried to save them a minute ago and stuff, but
She, man, when it comes to the kids, it comes to us. She's a strong-willed person, and I love it. And I think that's what I missed in a lot of my other relationships is I didn't have somebody that was my equal.
Yeah.
That she had the same drive in life, and she had the same wants in life, and the same outlook on life. And I can tell since my wife's been saved and we got baptized together that she's changed. A lot of her ways of thinking has changed, and it's all been for the better. You know, she looks at things from a lot of different perspectives now, and I love her for that. You know,
Well, one of the words you used, and that'll help us transition, is the things that you missed out on other relationships. And I think when you're talking about providing, there are some things that you don't want folks to miss out on. You know, the Bible says it this way: you can gain the whole world but lose your soul. And so you can get a bunch of stuff but lose out on the things that matter the most. So we don't want folks to miss out. All right, so transitioning, what would your advice be to those folks? Because sometimes, and we talked about in the last episode, sometimes you get into the mess that you're in because you made the mess.
right.
Right. So when it comes to providing and stuff, and this is something that you had mentioned about, like that cat in the cradle. Well, I ain't trying to put any cats in any cradles. Babies in cradles work, but I don't want to miss out on those babies, and then those babies growing up and everything else. And so over the years, what have you kind of learned that says, hey man, this is what matters?
I've missed births of my grandkids. I've missed birthday parties. I've missed wedding anniversaries. I've missed weddings, different things like that. And if I could go back, I think I would actually take the time to not work over, to to make sure that I'm there for those things, graduations, birthday parties, different things like that. Uh, my daughters are real good, and my son, they're all real good about trying to plan things when I'm home, and it helps out a lot. Uh, it also helps out having the kind of job that I have. When you have 14 days off, you can get a lot accomplished. When I was on the ambulance, I wasn't like that. Even when I was in retail and in the military, it I worked all the time. On the ambulance, you work 48 hours, off 48, work 72 a lot of times, and then you're off for 48. So you when you get off that morning, you're tired, but you don't want to go to sleep because you want to make sure you do things and get things done on your days off, and then the next day you're planning to go back to work, so you don't have that quality time to spend with your family. Um, I would advise everybody, man, take those kids to the park, take them fishing, go just spend a day, go to the movies. I don't know, sit around the house, do things around the house together. Just make sure that when you have that ability to have that time and that quality time, that you're giving the quality time to the people that deserve it, and that's your wife, your family, your kids. I know a lot of guys get off a 14-day hitch, and the first thing they do is start drinking, and they might drink the whole 14 days they're home, and that's not quality time. That's another hard part that I deal with sometimes is I'm around guys for 14 days, uh, you know, talking a certain way, being a certain way. It's all about work and everything. And then I catch myself sometimes. I come home And now I'm talking to my wife and to my grandkids and to my kids and everything like that. I have to adjust back to the father figure, the pawpaw figure, the dad, and
You mean they ain't your employees
yeah,
or coworkers and
exactly.
stuff?
Yeah, and you have to adjust my whole. It's hard sometimes to adjust that attitude and that talk. The way you talk to people and the way you do things, and getting you're still in that provider role, but you're in the provider role of providing that love and affection and and being part of the family again. So
And this is what I've noticed. Sometimes, and I've just pastoring guys that have worked, shift work, split shifts, and everything else. Um, Sometimes when they get home, they just want to have like me time. Like I just want to, like I'm tired of dealing with all the struggle and the work and stuff. And so, what would some ways be that you'd tell folks, look, man, this is how you got to shift that hat. You got to take that hat off there because some guys are like, man, look, I provide financially. I got them insurance. They all driving nice stuff. That's my wife's job to take care of all that home stuff. When I get home, I just want to go hunt, fish, and I just want to go do me and stuff. So, what do folks miss out when they're not present? I mean, they can be at a house but not be present. You can be there for 14 days at your home but not actually be present. So what advice would you give to folks like that?
I think you have to. So this is how I do things. When I'm at work for 14 days, I know that my wife and my granddaughter and my kids they're doing everything. My wife's doing the laundry, she's cooking or doing whatever they need to do to get by. So when I get home, um, I want to spend time with them, but I also make sure that I try to make sure the laundry's done. I try to make sure there's food on the table at nighttime when they come home. I try to do things to ease them, to let them get some rest and relaxation. And that also gives me quality time while I'm doing that to be with myself, to think, to get up in the morning times, reading my Bible, to watch the news, to listen to music or whatever. And I find ways to do things that eases my mind. Ride my motorcycle. I've rode my motorcycle this time home more than I have in a while. And that gives me time to think and time to just clear my mind.
Well, let me pause real quick. You know how to do laundry?
Yeah. Yeah. I do laundry every day.
Hey, that's a real man right there. Drives his Harley and stuff. But I just want to make sure y'all heard that. Like he actually knows how to do laundry. You know how to cook?
I cook almost every day.
Okay.
I last Thursday, I cleaned the house before she got home. Made sure that she didn't have to worry about it when she come home. All she could do is just sit around and watch TV, do what she wants to do.
See, a lot of dudes right now, they're like, man, a preacher friend of mine, like, man, when I preach sometimes I try to do a nut check. I'm like, what did you just like, okay, I get what you're saying. But but a lot of dudes are like, man, that ain't my kind of, that ain't my responsibility.
Man,
That ain't manly stuff.
this just got brought up last night. I don't know how to say it in a. Okay, so there's supplies that women need that
Yeah.
I'm not using. And I hear guys all the time say, "I'm not buying that for my
Hey, I got a
daughters.
buddy of mine. If you're watching, he talking about you, bro.
I'm not buying that for my daughters.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that for my
He
wife."
won't go down that aisle or nothing.
Let me tell you something. If I check out at a register at Walmart and that is what I'm checking out, and you don't know that those are not from me, you've got a bigger problem than I've got. And that's just how I look at things. I do laundry, I cook, I clean, whatever I need. Yesterday I mowed the yard, I weed eat. My wife does all that when I'm gone. I come home, my yard's cut. Now she don't weed eat, which I don't expect her to. I've come home before, my truck's been washed. I've come home before, my clothes are put away. So if she can do it while I'm gone, I can do it when I'm at home.
So you're telling me that it's not just enough to provide a paycheck. You've got to be able to be a help and present.
You got to provide that emotional support. It's your 14 days off, and hey, look, I like to fish. I like to ride my motorcycle. I like to use my laser engraver. I find time to do it when it's not going to affect my time with them. And you got to be able to work it. You got to, I had a guy that uh, come to work with us a while back, and that was one of the things that I teach. I try to teach guys in my job is you got to be able to multitask. If you can't multitask, if you're focused on one thing, like, hey, when I get off, all I'm gonna do is play my video game, man, you're not gonna make it. You're gonna lose time with your kids. You're gonna lose time with your wife. You're gonna lose time with family. Everything. I got a granddaughter that lives with us, and I tell her all the time, you got to get off the game sometime. You want to be a basketball player, you got to practice. You can't just play video games and can't just play basketball video games to think that that's how you're going to learn. Which, don't get me wrong, now she has learned a lot from YouTube and different things like that about playing basketball, and she's good at what she does. And I have other.
She could be better though. Get to practice, go outside, right?
I have other grandkids that are good in sports too, and
the Fiery Brothers.
Yeah,
I'll just throw that out there.
The Fiery Brothers, and their dad is, he's a provider. He works. He makes sure the kids have what they need. He makes sure they have food on the table and everything like that. And he tells them all the time, to get where you're going, you got to put in the work. You've got to. And if you don't put in the work, if you're not strong in work, strong in faith, and strong in family, I don't think you can make it.
Yeah. And what he'll tell you is strong people need God too.
Every day.
Right. Every day. So don't be a punk and just think to yourself, man, if I just provide financially, that's all that matters. No. There's more. There's more to you, and it's in you. Like God created you for more than just being a financial bank account. But you've got to, and look, that's work. Like it's work 14 while you're gone, but when you come home, you're invested in that work and your family, and it's work to get that marriage right. It's work to get the family right. It's work to, kids are work. It's not just an easy deal.
It's not. It's not just easy, and it's you got to put in the work. You got to. There's going to be struggles. There's going to be times that you need to be at home, but you need to be at work too, and you got to make the decision which one is, where do I need to be at. I had a good friend of mine that I've been asking you to pray for, his wife, and I don't think he would mind me mentioning his name. His name's Adam, and man, he's a brother. That guy, I love that dude. And him and his wife have been going through a big struggle, and at the beginning when all this stuff found out, her illness, he struggled with, I want to be at home, but I need to provide too. And and we all talked to him and everything, and he went home, and I think that was the best decision he made, and I think he thinks that now too, because he was there with her side by side, and that means a lot, man. My wife is sick. My wife, everybody knows she's a Crohn's patient, and she has Crohn's pretty bad, and she's had a couple surgeries and different things. They've tried her on all kinds of medicines and different things, and man, if I gotta miss work to be home because she's ill or something like that, then I just have to do it. It's a give and take. It's it kind of goes back to the last episode, the tug of war. It's the same thing in a relationship. You have to be able to give and take, and you have to, even though being that provider, and it's not just like you said, it's not just financial. You got to be emotionally able to provide. You got to be able to be that support for your spouse or for your kids when they need somebody to talk to. It can't always be about you messed up, you did wrong. For a long time I was like that. A lot of times the only time I said anything to my kids was when they messed up. I would say, "Hey, you screwed up. You screwed this up. You did that. You did this wrong." Or even to people I worked with, I was just always to the point where it was only about the bad things they did in life. When do you change to say, hey, these are the good things, and I'm happy for you, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And man, I'm a strict person. I don't put up with no BS. I'm that kind of person, and I know my granddaughter that lives with us. she and it's not because my daughter don't want her to live there or anything like that. She's comfortable where she's at, and that's where she lives, and her mom agrees with it. And you know what? Her mom, I let her mom do the parenting role, but I do step in sometimes when I see that there's a problem, and I don't do it I think a lot of times us as providers, I think a lot of times people look at us wrong because of some of the things we say. We might not say it in the right way. I'm blue collar. I'm an old biker. I ran the streets. I've done everything like so. I put things in real life.
Yeah.
I tell guys all the time, if you don't want to look at it by the book, by the way things are supposed to be done, look at it real life. You know, I want I want every one of my grandkids to grow up and never do the things that I did in life. I want my kids to always be better than me. I don't want to ever see them do the things that I did in life. And sometimes we come off as a person as, man, that dude, he's a a-hole, or he's rough, he's mean and stuff like that. And I know my granddaughter and I know my grandkids sometimes they say, man, Pawpaw's mean. It's not that I'm being mean. It's that I want you to understand it's a cruel world out there. It doesn't owe you anything, and there's always somebody, and that somebody is Satan trying to tear you down and try to make you do things that you don't want to do. And you've got to stand up to it. And the Bible's the way to do it.
Yeah.
It took me, I'll be 57 the end of this month, and it's taken me that long to understand that, you know. And
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, you can lose money and you can gain it back. You can lose the house and gain it back. You can lose the truck and gain it back. All these things. What you can't ever gain back is the time that is just wasted. And so, so in all of your choices to be a provider and just do life, if you're not careful, that time will slip away, and you'll be to that place in your life where, man, because I didn't take advantage of every moment, because I didn't do what the Bible talks about, redeeming the time, and because the days are evil, is how the Bible says. Redeem the time. So that means just make the most of it. And if we're not careful, man, we'll spend a lot of time focusing on providing money, providing paychecks, providing insurance, providing this, but we won't provide the guidance, the emotional support, in a lot of ways, the spiritual guidance of being a man who's going to be a spiritual leader in your household. You can waste that time. I'll encourage the folks with this, guys that I've known, firemen and folks. There's a Bible app. If you ain't got it on your phone, you might want to pick that up. But in the Bible app, there's a way to do like, and this is what a buddy of mine does. He'll because he's away a huge amount of time. And he's there half the year just as much as he is not there. So him and his wife decide, okay, look, we want to read the Bible together, and it's kind of uncomfortable for them at first, trying to figure out how do we do this spiritual life together. Um, but the Lord gave them that Bible app, and in there they came up with a Bible plan, and they can both do it together. And so every day they'll just kind of like say, okay, this is what I thought, and you can leave a personal note, and then they can read your note. And so you may not be able to like communicate, like, man, every time we try to pray together or talk about spiritual stuff, it just gets real awkward and all. Um, you know, but this is an opportunity to kind of just say, hey, let's grow together. And so all this is kind of new to you and all. Have you noticed ways that you've been trying to say, okay, look, this is how I'm going to try to provide spiritually for my family to
so
be a leader?
my wife, uh, just last time I was at work, she we were talking one day or one night. We talk usually a couple minutes in the morning time and then at nighttime, and she told me, she said, "Hey, before we get off the phone at nighttime, I want you to say a prayer for us." And I was like, man, that hit me like hard
Yeah.
because I know how to pray by myself, but to pray, and I know how to pray for other people by myself, but to pray with her, it meant like that's probably one of the most awesome things anybody's ever asked me to do in my life. And I'll admit I forgot the first night we hung up. That next night we talked, and I forgot. But the night after that, yeah, I prayed for us while we were on the phone together, and I think I even slept better that night. I mean, it just that's the worst thing man, you get a phone call from home when you're away from home. It's just like it goes through you because sometimes you don't know, especially if you're not used to getting that phone call. Like, me and my wife, I know she knows I'm going to call her in the morning time. She's going to call me. I'm going to call her at nighttime. We know that. But 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you get a phone call. It's kind of devastating. When I had my heart attack, I'd been having it for a couple days, but then about 4 o'clock that morning, it really got me, and so I went straight to the hospital, and they called my wife at like 4:30 that morning because I told the doctor, I said, "Hey, whatever you do, don't let me die in Midland, Texas." I said, "And call my wife and call my supervisor. That's all
Yeah.
And they did. They tried to call my wife, and it was like I don't know 4:30, 4:45, and it shocked her. And I don't even know if she heard the first time they called her because the phone rang and I don't even think she picked it up the first time. And then she saw what the number was and they called right back and she talked to them then. But to tell you how strong a woman, she drove 14 hours to be there for me when I got out,
Yeah.
of the thing. And it's you, man, when you don't have no control over your body and what's going on, it's a big, you start thinking about a lot of things. And, that doctor kept telling me, he said, "Man," he said, "it's your lucky day. It's your lucky day." And I told him, I said, I don't too much believe in luck. I think it's just somebody's not ready for me yet. Either he ain't ready for me up there or he ain't ready for me down there.
Mhm.
Somebody's got more plans for me.
Yeah.
Maybe this is that plan
Yeah.
that I didn't see coming, you know?
I don't know if y'all noticed this, but if you rewind a minute ago when he talked about praying for his wife, a little twinkle in his eye
It
came
did.
around. And so, look, I've got a deacon buddy of mine who he and his wife, that was one thing they just never did. And when they started doing that, it's been a real change. I'd encourage you, um, the Bible created a man and a woman to come together, and we'll talk about marriage and stuff, I know, in another episode. So I don't want to give that away, but it's created for intimacy, and intimacy is oneness. Like you've been created to be one. That's emotionally, physically, woo woo, spiritually, but it's meant for intimacy. And so sometimes if your relationship is kind of stuck, start being a man and praying for your spouse, like out loud over her life, and you'll begin to realize that, man, this is like it's like a connection that just kind of happens. And so so even while you're trying to provide, man, I encourage those guys out there, like, look, this is a great way to do it. Provide emotionally and spiritually for your family, and just try it out. Just test the waters. Uh, and this is what I've noticed: your spouse probably knows you better than anybody else. And so it's hard to pray if you just cussed her out. It's hard to pray if you've been fighting. So sometimes the lack of prayer is an indicator, like, hey, we kind of in a little struggle right now. And so so sometimes you got to get that right, because it's hard to talk to God because you ain't about to fake it.
Right.
So it's hard to talk to God and pray over your wife. It's like, I ain't trying to pray over her, none. I ain't trying to talk to her anyway. So that's a great way to kind of get a little bit closer in that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, that's a big change in her attitude toward things too, because she never would have said that before. She never would have said that before we were both saved. Um, like I said, she's strong willed. She's just like me. But we're starting to. Maybe it's because we're growing older together. I don't know. We've been together a long time, and it's. I don't know that I could do it in life without her. I mean, especially the job I'm in, I couldn't do it without her because she does take care of things, and she's strong. But yeah, we'll talk about that more
Good
in
stuff.
the next episode. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so that'll be coming up right around the corner. We'll be talking about marriage, and the importance of that. And look, even for myself, we'll just talk about some things that ought to be able to draw you closer. But in this providing part of it, just realize, you're not meant to just provide um, financially, but there's a whole nother world that you got. Learn how to wash some clothes without messing them up. You see, some guys out there, they'll try to wash clothes and they'll mess them up on purpose because then they know their wife will be like, "Look, I'll just do it myself. I ain't gonna deal with
I
you."
have messed them up. I have messed them up and been told, "Do not do the laundry anymore. I'll do it."
Yeah.
But, you figure it out.
Yeah, and at some point in time, though, you got to realize, okay, look, when you're home, it ain't just me time. You're going to lose out on all of those moments, and so if you're going to be present, and just as much commitment as you took to your job, when you get home, yeah, you're gonna have to decompress some. Um, a buddy of mine, and tell me if this is true or not. All right, so we'll just kind of start winding this down. He's like, man, a day or two before he has to go back to work, and he's doing shift as well. Like his attitude would get grumpy, and he'd already like start focusing, like he's already at the job before he ever left the house because he's like mentally trying to prepare himself for that whatever grind and gruel he's got at the workplace.
You got to get it's kind of the same way as coming home. You get back into that emotional phase and dad phase and football phase. You go back to that life. It's the same way when you go to work. You gotta build back up, especially if you're a true man. If you're a real man and you're taking at heart what you're doing in life, going back to work is and you get grouchy, but a lot of that too can be you not taking care of yourself. You not providing for yourself. You got to provide for yourself too, health wise and everything else. So
Yeah. So one of the best ways to do that is if you're struggling. He just gave COVID to both of us.
Yeah.
Again, so he caught on it. But look, if you haven't figured out that the Lord can help you to deal with some of the stuff that you're dealing with, to pray, to give it to God, to let go of that rope that we talked about a while back, and to just start learning how to surrender, even that part of your life. If you don't ever learn that, because you weren't made to to do this on your own. You're strong and virile and all that kind of stuff. But at some point in time, you got to realize, man, I can't do this on my own, right? And so that's
yeah,
what you realize.
and to change that way, people are gonna look at you different. If you're used to an image that person used to be like, and now they've changed and they've started reading their Bible and they started following Jesus and doing things like that, it's a change. It's a change for the better. But some people don't. They're still lost and they don't look at you that way. So, yeah.
So that's a good deal. So look, so we've talked about providing, all right. So making sure that you're not only you don't work, you don't eat. So you got to take that responsibility upon yourself to say, okay, look, I want to be a man of my word, man of action, man who takes care of things, but also making sure that that cat in the cradle. All right, some of y'all already left a comment below, and all, to make sure that look, you don't waste your life getting everything and not being able to enjoy any of it, right? And with those that you love as well. But I want to encourage you to really take that step forward to say, okay, I'm going to be the spiritual leader of my house and start taking that responsibility. Any other last words for these folks?
No, I think you have to learn to balance it, and you have to push away sometimes. You have to push away from that constantly working, constantly being the provider, and you have to be that dad, the father.
You don't need that new squatted truck. You see the guy. You don't need that. You don't need the upgraded Harley and stuff. You can go buy you one of them gold wings on Marketplace or something. Find you a cheaper way to enjoy yourself. I know you're saying, right? Yeah.
I don't know if we're doing that.
Yeah. But look, stay out of the mess by making those important decisions that keep you from getting to where you're always chokehold. Because the pleasures and cares of this world can get so much it literally chokes the life out of you because you got that pressure of always having to provide. You can, spam can be your friend. You ain't got to eat steak every night. Like sometimes you can cut back a little bit so that you can enjoy the things that you want to enjoy.
Right.
And so with those now, we're both saying right and all. When we've made some of those decisions in life, that's like, oh, I regret that one. I had fun using it, but I regret every moment of it. But one of the things that we want to close with is so Red had talked about trying to be that spiritual leader, praying over his wife and family. Sometimes I'll close in prayer, but it seemed like a good time to let this brother close in prayer and pray over you guys and stuff. So if you don't mind, just
yeah, sure.
I'll put him on the spot. He's like, man, come on, bro. But this here's what the Lord laid on his heart. So I want you to see. Look, I want you to see by episode 100 where it's like, man, I see God moving in his life and growing in his life, and mine as well. And so I'm just excited about that. So just close us to prayer if you would, bro.
Father, we come to you and ask you to look over everybody that's viewing this podcast. Look over our families. Look over our wives, kids. And there may be somebody out there that strictly thinks that all they have to do is provide, and show them the way that they can spend time with their families and their kids, and be emotional part and not just the provider part. They can provide emotionally also, not just financial. And Jesus, thank you for putting this on my heart and letting me share this with everybody out there. I hope somebody is getting something out of it, and maybe if I just touch that one person, then I've done what you've asked me to do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Now you got a byline. Tell these folks what it is.
Strong people need God.
All right, good to see y'all. We'll see y'all next episode.
Stay strong. And until next time, thank you for listening. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Remember, no matter where you are in life or faith, you are not alone. Strong people need God.